Hey everybody, welcome to SPP. Today we're gonna, but first comment I see, Tammy, hey bitches, all caps.
Hey,
Really no question that Tammy was supposed to be on the Sterling and Stone team. Yeah, so today's topic is going to be sort of balancing the various aspects of being an entrepreneur. The way that it was, that we wrote it out, or that was Amy, I suppose, wrote it out, was, how to balance art and business. But this is really like it's the two hats of an entrepreneur, or an authorpreneur. So you need to, basically making time, like how do you balance your day to produce a book and run the business if you're just one person? Now, obviously, we're going to be answering from the perspective of not just one person, but I did it independently for a while, and I know anything we say would be adaptable to a one-person operation as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think Dave can kind of carry the show because the one person I know who balances art and business, it's like
he does balance it very, very well.
Well, it's like the Cirque du Soleil of art and business. I mean, he can just work into these amazing shapes. He's fluid. Do you want to talk about that, Dave, or you want to save it for when we get to the topic?
I'll save it for when we get to the topic. I don't want to blow anyone away with my business acumen right away.
Well, do you have something cool? Can you start with that?
I got nothing cool.
Nothing cool?
No, you guys go. I'll see if I think of something.
Okay.
I'll get rid of this feature, really.
I'll do something cool.
I have one.
There's an app that I got. Cindy got me an iWatch for my birthday, and so it has all these little, like, of course I'm looking up for different apps and stuff, and one I found that I just think is kind of delightful. It's called Streaks, and it's actually for iPhone. It has a companion iWatch part, but the actual iPhone one is just for building like habits. So you pick 6 different habits that you want to build, and it's really simple and it's really straightforward. But it's helping me build little tiny, like we talked about habit stacking. It's very good for like habit stacking type of stuff. Anyway, it's on Apple or iOS. It's called Streaks.
I was just very disappointed that Dave was not around to make a joke about an app called Streaks. Kind of vanished for a while. But appify that. Mine is actually an article that Sean passed around in our Slack from Vanity Fair called "Why Hollywood as We Know It Is Already Over." I suppose I can.
That article.
Yeah, it's. I can paste the link when I'm done explaining it. But basically, it's an article about Hollywood facing what the music industry and the newspaper industry have already faced, which is, used to be big music.
And the publishing industry.
And the publishing industry, yes, most applicable to this audience, although they're slow to understand it as well. But, the music industry used to be like controlled by the, a small handful of music producers. And, it was based on full price sales of albums in stores. And when it was like, no, the iTunes store is going to allow people to buy individual songs, then it was like, okay, well, that fundamentally changes business, and an industry has to scramble to adjust. And the newspaper industry is the same. Like, why get a full newspaper you have to go out and get it, or even if it's delivered to you, when you may only want to do a quick search and find out what's going on top websites or blogs, or
we've seen the results of not having a strong newspaper.
Well, I feel like there's more.
I feel like there's more there.
Like a joke there.
I'll save that for another day.
No, you just interrupted. Like we need to understand what you're talking about. Okay, that could be your something cool.
There you go. So, but basically it's, the same thing is, the argument here is that the same thing is already happening in Hollywood and they just haven't figured it out. So like, movie productions are just very bloated. They're very unionized, and he tells us, I think it's, I didn't want to say he, but I think it is. He tells a story about somebody like an actor, an actress who were finishing a scene, and there was like an errant drop of rain on the actress's shoulder, and he kind of brushed it away. And this, grip or somebody came in and got all mad and was like, "That's my job. That's my job. You just did my job."
And like literally, that person's job was to wipe off rain off of the actors, like specifically.
So the argument of like more home viewing, right? More home viewing of movies, downloading, binge watching, people like Amazon and Netflix and YouTube producing their own content. Just an interesting look at the future of entertainment. I just want to say I certainly hope that theaters don't go away. Big Hollywood can go away, that's fine, but I still want to watch my movies in theaters.
Well, the nature will change. Do you know about the set-top box that's like already out? There's a business model for it, but there's a lot of push against it. Have you guys heard about this? I forget what it's called. But like Shyamalan is actually one of the people against it. So is Spielberg, James Cameron. But basically there's a box that they could do this right now. Theaters are obviously very much against it. And it would allow you to watch the movie the day that it's released, but only through this one box. But the price would be like $150 or something.
That's temporary though.
What, the $150?
That price would come down, and that's what they're afraid of.
Well, no, what they're afraid of is it's still cost effective. So like, let's say when I first read about this, I think the price the strong price they wanted was like $99, right? So $100 for a new release, that sounds kind of expensive until you really break it down. And the example they were using was Zootopia, which was a brand new movie at the time. And they're saying, you have like a slumber party, or you have like a bunch of kids, like you're taking, 6 kids to a movie, you spend that anyway, right? And you get
one of those in my basement.
And all, and you get your snacks and all of that. So the economics for big families, like it makes sense anyway, and they can stay home. So there is the technology already there, but theaters are really railing against it. And Spielberg has said things like, this is our last like communal experience. Like other than church, this is it. Like got sports, church, and the theater. Like you can't take this away from us. So I do think that theaters need to do a better job. Things like the Alamo is awesome because they do not tolerate texting or, being an asshole. In fact, they have a thing that starts is like, don't be a dick, like before the movie. So
my theater would have gun turrets in it.
So I think that, the theater right by my house, they ripped it all out and they're putting like these big, like really comfortable chairs and like,
the Cinemarks here have those luxury loungers. They're awesome.
Yeah. So I think that the theater has to offer more, but it's a little bit like what happened to arcades, right? Like in the 80s and 90s, arcades were everywhere, but like, what is an arcade going to offer that your PS4 doesn't, right? So you have to change that experience.
A chance to wait in line with a handful of money.
I used to love arcades.
I did too. Yeah, I loved arcades so much.
So my newspaper thing was just that it's not going to get political. Just the fact that newspapers have more or less died is a very bad thing because you have no watchdogs watching the people in power. And when you don't have that, when you have cut budgets, when you have just the bullshit you see, I worked in
the bullshit you don't.
Yeah. I mean, it's a horrible mess we've gotten into, and I do not see a way out of it. And everything is doomed.
What the independent?
Everything is doomed.
Everything is doomed.
The independent people on the web aren't watchdogging. I would argue there's more oversight because newspapers can be owned by a conglomerate, like Sumner Redstone owns half the media and shit.
Yes, and there always was that, but there are also independent or smaller newspapers. Bloggers in general, they don't have. Okay, this is a problem when you don't have a newspaper. You don't have the historical knowledge of stuff,
or the hysterical knowledge.
Yeah, or hysterical. You have people that
you have that if you write for Cracked though. Then you.
I mean, there are some good ones, obviously, but a lot of them they've already got an angle they're going for. They've already they don't know what they don't know. And when you have a good newspaper that's been around for a while and they know all the ins and outs, they go to the city meetings, they know what the hell they're talking about. And there is a difference in every aspect that makes a difference. I'm just rambling.
Wow.
It annoys me.
Wait, hold on. Does it have as good of aspects in the things and the ways that matter with the stuff?
I just want to clarify. It's the differences that make a difference.
Fuck off, all of you. I'm trying not to get political. All right, so just forget I said anything.
Can you give more specificals?
I'm really glad that you added a T-shirt to our list. So one more time, it's the differences that make a difference. Is that right?
Truer words have never been.
I'm imagining a logo that has like people holding hands. The differences that make the difference.
I'm not kidding. I'm adding this right now.
I'm silencing now for the rest of the show. You guys have fun.
If only we had a major newspaper to worry about this silencing of media going on in this podcast.
Oh man, I'm gonna add this to our newly organized Asana.
All right. Well, speaking of newly organized Asana, I was just wondering what the hell you do if you don't want to spend a fortune on a developmental editor after your story is full of plot holes. If only you could avail yourself of the excellent editing and developmental advice that's available at Sterling and Stone, what would you do in that scenario, Dave?
I don't know. We're all doomed anyway. There's nothing you can do.
What would you do, Sean, in a different way to make the difference?
I would take all of the differences in my story and I would hire a developmental editor to make
But it costs $1 billion. And
but I would have to think different, because if I want to be different about my differences, then I would need to be different and do it before my story instead of after, because usually people do it after the story, but then you don't have any differences.
So you would argue that getting somebody in at an early stage, and this would also be applicable to separating the art and business as per today's topic of the show. You're a one-person shop. You're trying to do it all yourself, and you don't have anybody to bounce ideas off of, somebody who knows story, then I would argue that you go and get a Sterling and Stone story jacket. And I would also argue that you go ahead and book one of those now if you think you're going to need one soon, because they fill up in advance. They do. For everything except for romance, that is a story jacket at sterlingandstone.net/story jacket. Or if you're in romance, Tammy is happy to help you out with a story garter at sterlingandstone.net/story garter. And a spontaneous testimonial from Heather Thompson that says, story jacket makes a difference. There you go.
All right, the t-shirt is added.
That was a long time to write one sentence.
Well, I had to find it in Asana, and it's all different now. So for those of you not in the know, Christine has totally revamped our Asana.
Is reorganizing Asana. It's in progress.
Asana,
so yeah, she's she's actually making it useful, which is lovely. So how do we want to deal with how do we want to address the question of dealing with business and your art when you're making time for both and prioritizing and all that stuff, especially if you're a one-person shop?
I think we could break it into the three major things. I think deciding on what's important is important.
Wow.
So deciding on what's important for sure, and then kind of prioritizing that, and then to know. I mean, we talk about outsourcing a lot, but I think this is a really good place to talk about it. Like when do you know that you kind of need to cry mercy and start paying for help?
Is there a question, an answer to that question?
No, I'm just saying that those are three kind of topics. So if we want to start with, like, how do you decide what's important? Dave, if you keep laughing, I'm going to keep laughing. So I'm going to have to ask you to stop. Dave blacked out for all those you.
There you go.
Okay, so how do we decide? And we have this a lot of times, right? Because we've had to. I mean, you and me, Johnny, specifically, have had to make choices. Okay, well, we're going to pull back on production here because we have these unavoidable things over here. So how do we make time because we tend to be and we're better at it now by putting time limits on stuff and saying, okay, well, that sounds really exciting, but we'll address that in a month when we have more bandwidth. But we used to just try to do everything at all times. So what are some of the strategies that we use to kind of prioritize?
Well, I mean, and this is, you're going to need to adapt a little bit if you're a one-person shop, but honestly, because there are two of us, and Sean leans more business and I lean more production slightly. And so we're sort of like, it's either, like if I'm involved, it's either on or off, we're either having a bit. So actually a good example coming up is we have a podcast work retreat that we're going to be in a couple of weeks. and it's here in town, so it's not like we're flying or anything, but that means those are full day. And that means that I'm going to be spending a full day on business. I mean, Sean is too, but Sean isn't like frontline production as in terms of new words, like he's story world and editing and stuff, but it does cost both of us on both ends. But we have to basically set that aside and say, okay, so what is the cost of that in terms of dollars, obviously, but also in terms of production, because that's just a day we don't do. But I get in a full day of writing, like that's a block time. I have 4 hours every morning, every weekday morning that I'm on. Like if I'm in the office, I'm spending 4 hours, and it's kind of non-negotiable. Like I do everything else in the afternoon. Like I write until noon, and then in the afternoons are when the other stuff happens. And we just sort of, I mean, honestly, I don't know. Most people, like, I can't write 8 hours a day. So if you're full time right there, you're going to have extra time. And maybe it's more of a question if you're not full time, how do you prioritize that? But it seems like about half for us, right? Do you think that's a good?
I think half is really reasonable. I think the edge always has to go to the production because, I mean, again, we're in creative businesses, so we're creating IP. Like every time we're done with a book, that is intellectual property. You can make money off of that forever. So you want to create as many assets as possible. So if I have to sacrifice on something, it's not, I'm not going to say it's not because I do sacrifice sometimes, but ideally it's not production. And production for me is anything from, I mean, it could be story shopping, it could be editing, it could be polishing, it could be that final tweak when I'm getting stuff back from the editor, but it's basically the way we get product to market. And so I always do that before noon. Like it's all my hours before noon are spent for production, not meetings, not business, not podcasting, not email, nothing.
We're strangely parallel. I'm realizing that.
Yeah. We both spend all of our mornings doing that. Now I always have a break at 9:30 my time. And I take one story meeting or call during that time. But that's like a nice break for me anyway. And then I go back sharper. So I need to get out and walk anyway. So I don't even feel like that's a disruption. I always had a walk during that time, but now I'm just including other people in the walk. So that means that if something happens and my day goes off the rails or I'm giving other parts of the business attention, and that would be podcasts, that would be general business meetings, that would be apprentice stuff, really anything else in the business. That has to happen after 2 o'clock. And from 12 to 2, that's a little bit of flex time. Like I'll go to the gym, I'll have lunch, spend some time with Cindy. And then 2 o'clock, I hit it again. And that's the end of my day until dinner time. But I'm very protective about those times. Like I know it's creative time and I don't bleed into that unless it's an absolute emergency or a really special instance like the podcast retreat. I'll for sure do it then, but I know ahead of time. But yeah, anytime that we're deviating from that very rough schedule, first half of the day is production and then second half of the day is everything else, the more it costs us long term.
What do you think in terms of, like, do you think that's true for all stages of authors, new authors, more experienced authors?
No, I don't. I think you should always be generally aware of where you're spending your time. So you really want to gather that information. And I don't think that we're always aware of how long we spend on stuff. So like Johnny, when we first started working together, I was tracking pretty much everything, right? Like because I was trying to get faster, and I don't do that anymore. The one thing I'm tracking right now is script hours because I'm still learning that as a skill, and I want to make sure that I'm not going obnoxious hours per script, and I kind of want to know what the return is. And so I started counting hours back, last year when writing crashed. So I'm still tracking that, but it's because I'm trying to learn. I think that once you kind of know yourself and you know how long things take and you have a pretty good idea, then there's no point in tracking it, because if you're not going to measure it, then you're just wasting time tracking it. So, and if there's no need to measure it, then what's the point? And I realized that I was tracking things that I didn't ever check back up on. So that's just a waste of time. But I do think that you want to really look at it and don't make assumptions. I like to revisit things every quarter, and I've kept my time blocks pretty much the same. So, but I'll change the definition. So for example, I used to count post-production stuff as not the same as edit or polish or story shopping. And that would get handled in the afternoons. But now it's actually part of the morning stuff, and my morning block goes a little longer than it used to, because it's not really business, it really is creating product. It is production, and I have so many other things in the afternoon for business that it just doesn't quite fit there anymore. So I think that you want to be malleable in how often you change the definitions of things and put them where they're supposed to go, and just keep an eye that you are. I would never ignore one thing 100%. Like never go all business or all creative. I think that allows one or the other to atrophy.
Yeah, I would second really a lot of what Sean said in terms of scheduling and blocks and revisiting. So I find that I do really well with more limitations and restrictions. And if I can set myself a schedule and say, this is when I do this, this is when I do this, the better I can do that, the better I perform. So I actually just redid these maybe a month ago, and am like just now getting to the point where it's really starting to feel familiar. And it's interesting because it's one step, it's kind of one step beyond having an idea of what you want to do and keeping tabs on things, because then it's on a calendar. And it's not literally like this, but it's a little bit like, it's absolutely not literally like this, but it's a little like, Wednesdays at 4 is when I check in on my book covers. I mean, not really, but like your book marketing or whatever, like that's a business block. And, they're going to adjust if you're working part-time. It may be like, you have a certain amount of time every day, and I would plan your personal stuff around it too. So if you, for instance, one of the things that, this is actually maybe a really good example. So I used to wake up at 6. And I actually tried, this is a little side story, I actually tried waking up at 5 for a while, and I found that I was less productive. So it actually increased my productivity to sleep more because I was just like burned out. But I used to wake up at 6 and I would write right away. And I would write for 3.5 hours, something like that. No, like 4 hours. I'd write from 6 to 10 or something. And then when we moved to Austin, my kids started a regular school, which they'd never done before. So now Sydney gets on the bus around 7, and Austin gets on the bus like 7:45. And so I can either come up here and ignore my kids and just write, or I can write and then they come and say, hey Dad, I'm going to the bus stop, and then go down with them and come back. Or I can do what I do now and wait until they're gone. But that was a weird adjustment for me, was trying to decide, well, how do I work with that piece of my life and then fit my writing and then of course my business productively around it in a way that was maximally effective. Meaning if I'm interrupted, that's not good. So the only option that was any good if I was going to start writing at 6 was write straight through and basically ignore them, or they could come in and say goodbye, which I didn't like. So what I decided to do was in the mornings before, like while the kids are getting ready and stuff, I'm not like working with them, they're just kind of around. And that's dedicated time that I do not do writing. And what I've been doing is like reworking the autoresponder sequence. Like this is something that Christine and I have talked a lot about, and trying to figure out how to make that work for fiction. I'll write marketing emails during that time. Sometimes I write author's notes. I don't usually answer email because I've decided that needs to be my high priority time, and email is kind of candy. So it's like, what are the most important non-writing things that need to happen during the week, and they happen in that like hour and a half period of time. And then after Austin's on the bus, Robin and I walk the dogs around the block, and then I come and then I do my writing time. So it's dedicated. It's on the calendar. Like I know I write from 8:15 till noon every weekday. I have that block in the morning where I do a pre-selected list of the most important non-writing tasks, not email, but like the most important things that happen in the morning. And Amy does a lot of our scheduling, and I keep trying, like she can't always meet, my meeting needs with other people's meeting needs, but I keep saying 4:00, like that's 4:00 every day. I have a block that's my ideal meeting time if possible. And the more you can do that, the more you're able to see that everything gets taken care of.
Yeah, I also think that it really, really matters to not just be going through the motions, because a lot of people who feel like, oh, I don't have time to balance art and business. I don't have time to get to my business stuff if I'm always writing. But it's possible you're going through the motions and you're going through to-do lists that you made 6 months ago, and you're feeling productive, you're feeling busy because you're able to hit those things in the allotted times, but they may not be what you actually need. So really looking at if you have limited time, it's different if we're all full time, right? So like Johnny said, half of our time can be spent writing and half of our time can be spent on business, where Dave has half his time for writing and half the time for winning his marriage. Like it's really divided that way evenly. And you have to think, what am I doing with my time? But you may not be using it as effectively as you think you are. So if you only have 4 hours of business per week, make sure that you're doing the thing that those 4 hours will take you to the next leverage point.
Yes.
Best. So don't just, if you only have a few hours. Okay. So I think here's a typical scenario for a lot of artists and a lot of entrepreneurs. They have this list of to-dos and they're looking at them and they have maybe an hour to get stuff done. So they're looking at the oldest thing that they feel bad about that they haven't cleared off yet. Right. So maybe there's a 3-week-old task. It has no relevance to actually making them money or getting them more time, but it's the oldest thing. And maybe it's only a 5-minute job and this other thing is a 40-minute job. And they just want to be done with don't do the 5-minute job just because it makes you feel good that you get to cross it off. Go do the 40-minute job that's going to get you money faster. And really start focusing on your low-hanging fruit, because what you ultimately want to do is be able to buy yourself more time. And maybe that's a good segue into talking about outsourcing and when to make those decisions. But what you really want to do is dig into your schedule and ask yourself the questions. If I only have this much time, what are the activities that I can pick that are pretty high yield for the amount of time I have to invest?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about outsourcing is, first of all, it's probably a bigger deal. Sorry, it's probably not as big of a deal as you think. You hear the word outsourcing, you're like, number one, there's no way I'm hiring employees, or number two, well, I'm not ready to start buying my widgets mass produced in China. Like, it starts to seem like a bigger thing than it is. Usually it's hiring an assistant virtually. And somebody who is going to work for you for 10 hours a week or something. I just gave somebody this advice the other day. And it's like there's a weird cliff there that like people need to get over that, and when they get over it, like they're usually quite happy, assuming it's a competent assistant. But it's like you do have that resistance that people need to get over that hump, and the resistance comes in a few forms. Number one, wow, how am I gonna just deal with that? Because it takes you somebody. I don't have time now, so I'm gonna onboard somebody and teach them everything I do. It's faster if I just do it myself. And the other side is, how am I going to afford that? I can't spend on it. And I would advise, assuming that you actually have a business that is producing at least some income, or even if it's not, depending on your situation, seriously consider that how much time is going to be saved. So there was stuff that I was doing, even at our relatively more mature stage for Sterling and Stone, where I was doing like graphics, and that doesn't make any sense for me to be doing some specific graphics. But we recently hired a graphics person. I'm like, it's going to take me long. Can I just get this done? I have enough shit on my plate as it is. Can I just get it done? And it's faster for me to just do it than to, am I frozen for you guys?
No, you're not.
Okay, I can continue. I just paused the audio. But it's faster for me to get this done than to explain it to him. But then it's like, well, if I just do it once, if I just get over the hump once and just explain it one time, then I'm never going to have to do it again because he can do it. And also, you usually a competent assistant, once you get into that, once you have trained them and have them doing things for you, they're going to allow you more time to do the stuff that actually makes you money that you aren't able to do because you're spending so much time doing a lot of that other crap. And so you need to look at the things that are repeatable, that you can basically describe exactly how to do it with little room for interpretation, that you're not good at, and or that you hate doing and that somebody else could reasonably do for you. And those are the things you consider to outsource.
Yeah, for sure. Because, and I know we've talked about this so many times over the years, but it's true. I mean, you're already outsourcing. That's the thing. I mean, if you're successfully publishing books, then you're outsourcing already, and you don't. You just have to outsource in different things. So you're already paying somebody to do your cover, right? You're already paying somebody to do your edit. Maybe you're paying
anyway.
Right, you absolutely should be. You could pay somebody to do your product description. You could pay somebody to do your web graphics if you're going to put ad stuff on Facebook. You could pay somebody to
someone to win your marriage.
You could pay somebody to win your marriage. You could pay somebody to come up with good keywords, categories, figure that stuff out. You can pay somebody to do anything, even if it's just basic research. Like if you want to set your place, in a certain town, and like pay somebody for an hour's worth of little tidbits there that you don't have to spend that hour, because you're going to spend that hour doing something like actually taking those tidbits and writing. So you may just want 20 links to read, but you don't want to go take the time to find those links. You want to think of ways. What are the things that, and unless part of that is like you love that, if you love that part of the process to find those 20 links, then don't outsource that. But if it's something where that's something you have to do because you actually just want to read the 20 links, then get somebody else to do that. Anything that you can do that makes you go faster with the things that only you can do is a very worthy expense. Also know when it is. Christine brings this point up in Slack, and I think it's really good. If you're in the beginning and you're just getting your 3 books so that you have a funnel, you don't need to think of a ratio. Just that's pure creation. Just get that stuff done. Don't worry about, am I balanced with business and writing, because you don't have a business to balance yet. You're just in creation mode.
Right. I feel like I want to check in with Dave. Anything to add on this?
No, I got nothing to add. I'm staring at your video. It's frozen, and you just like you're staring.
You look intense, dude. You look really intense. I'm gonna screenshot this actually. This is awesome. Johnny, you can see how intense you look on a regular basis. This is awesome. All right, screenshot take.
Yeah, I think I can see it in. I think I can see it in the little preview panel for me. Yeah, I don't know. I got a whole thing, but was anyone else imagining when Dave said outsourcing winning your marriage, just imagining Dave in an argument with his wife, and then he goes and, honey, this is Julio. He's going to take over for me at this point.
I'm going to tap another dude in here.
Dude, there's got to be services out there that do that. There's just got to be, right? If not, we need to build an app with Seth. I'm sure there's a way to do this. Okay, so how about somebody who's really frustrated because they don't feel like they're making any gains? They feel like their business is going really, really fast. They're barely able to keep up with production, but they also have business scaling plans or pains. So maybe this is where we were, Johnny, before we started bringing on people to really help us, where we were just finding ourselves, by nature of growing quickly, having to do more and more and more of just the everyday tasks that it took to run the business. Like, how do you make that first jump? Like, I know I have an idea, but I'm curious to see what you would say.
Well, I mean, I think I've already sort of given it in the example. What would you say on this?
Well, I think that I think you need a plan for sure, but I think that you just kind of have to make the jump. I think that at some point you have to hire that. I think it starts with one person. So, we had one person and that didn't quite work out. And then our next one person was Amy, and that worked out really, really well. And at first that was so overwhelming for her because she had to absorb everything because she was that one person. But that's the chaos of growing. And, like as soon as we could, we moved her into a place where she could do more and stuff that was more, within what she wanted to do, which means better work in less time. But in that first wave, I think just getting somebody to help you understand what you need, because that was part of it too. Amy helped us understand what we actually needed. And when you're just going really fast and just trying to build a business, you don't necessarily know what you need because you don't have line of sight to it. You're just trying to run as fast as you can and grab things as they come towards you and dodge things as they're trying to hit you. And it takes a point of maturity in your business to recognize that you need help and then to know what you need. So I think a good place to start is maybe a conversation with yourself, writing down where your weaknesses are, what kind of specific help would give you the strength to get to the next place, and then find somebody who can, help you find those other people, because you're never going to find one person. And I think that's a big, big, big mistake. I mean, either of you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that's a huge mistake that a lot of people make, is trying to find that one person who can just do everything. Oh, they'll be my WordPress person, customer support, on and on and on. And they'll just do all of this stuff. And that's just not reasonable. You really need somebody who can help you find the WordPress person and the graphics person and all of that. And these people do not have to work for you full time. I mean, you could give them 1 hour a week. It's one job. Here, can you make this graphic for me? But if you have one person who's like a liaison to facilitate that, then it's a way to handle outsourcing in a much smarter way.
Yeah, I kind of don't know what to weigh in and add on that. Just that I would agree. I mean, beyond hiring an assistant, that's sort of a little more advanced than I think a lot of people are doing. Do you think that this is like a matter of fitting in business and stuff into a rather small amount of time because it's a part-timer and they're literally by themselves and they have 3 hours a week tops? Well, I mean, you have more than 3 hours a week probably.
Yeah, you want to just talk about like what are the highest leverage business tasks that, like, if you focus on these three things, it's always a good use of your time.
Yes, I would say that for sure. And I'll go first. I mean, obviously, like we're omitting writing because that's obviously right. That should be self-evident. But I would say, as far as like the businessy stuff, like what are the businessy things you need to consider? I would say, no surprise, list building and, mailing your list. So list stuff, email list stuff. I would probably put financial in there. It may be stupid easy for you. Like you may not have a hard time with financial because maybe you're in KDP Select and you have 2 books and your financial consists of looking at one report once a month or something. But I think you need to have some idea of what is outgoing and what is incoming, because that may or may not surprise you. And don't forget to think about your time as well. So if you spend 50 hours on something and you're like, well, it only cost me $20, like that was still an expensive cost.
And a lot of people do make that exact argument.
Right. And maybe that's actually a point on the assistant or hiring somebody example as well, is, well, I can just do it cheaper. Well, okay, but how long did it take you to, quote, do it cheaper? Like, really? Was it really cheaper?
It's almost always more, because you're not doing the thing as fast as a skilled person would do it. So you're doing something that takes you longer, where they could do it faster and better, and you're not really saving anything. But it's a reframing thought, and that does take time. But I don't think you see a lot of people start to outsource and then stop, right? You see people who just don't do it, but you don't see people who do it and then are like, well, I don't like all the time that saved me, right? Because the thing is, you do. Now, if you use that time to go do stupid things, that's
I'm going to go to the movies.
Right. Like, right.
Which, by the way, you can do that. Just understand that it's not a business benefit. Understand that you've just saved yourself personal time.
Right. If you only have 3 hours a week to think about business stuff,
how can I do my third? Because I feel like you're going to list yours now.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Mine would be forward thinking or strategizing. Like what are your next steps? So, if you're writing a trilogy and it's finishing up, then what do you want to do next? You want to do some like market research on what's good and intersects with your sort of sweet spot. What are other authors doing? That sort of thing.
Yeah, my list is really, really similar. I would do list building for sure and forward thinking for sure. I think those are both super important. The other one I would do, and I mean, this so shows the difference between us, because of course.
Yeah, I love that mine was finance, and you're like, no,
right? Yeah, no, of course that's important. But only 3 things. Like I would community like. This is slightly different than list building, because list building is getting the names on the list. But I think that showing the readers that I love them, whether that meant, like a little Facebook group or emailing or whatever, that seems like a really good thing to do, because you have to foster your community. You have to nurture those readers. So if I'm a solo author and I only have 3 things to touch, I would definitely want to know where I'm going. I'd want to constantly be calibrating what I'm doing. And I would always want to be list building because that's my future. And I would always want to be communicating with my readers. So I think those are probably the three touchstones that are most important for the way I think about things.
If you had to if you said that community building is part of list building, like if you had to combine those, what would be
then yeah, absolutely. Then my list would be the same as yours. But I do think that list building is slightly different than community building because one is acquisition. And that's just an entirely different process. And
I combined them. I was like dealing with your list.
Yeah. So, but you could absolutely do that. And I do think financials are important. And I don't mean to like minimize them at all. It's just, especially talking about business over creativity. Of course, that has weight. I like Amy's question here too. Oh, sorry.
I was going to check in with Dave. I was going to say, what would Dave do? WWDD.
I hate the entire business aspect of everything. I do. I focus on the creative. I do like the building a community and talking to people.
Well, what would you do, Dave? This is actually interesting because you have
my own.
Yeah, you do. You have me and Johnny and everybody else, and we do handle the business stuff so that you can be the artist. But if you were solo, what three things would you focus on? I mean, you're here every week. You know what you would do. What would you do?
I would, other than writing, I'd probably do more blogging or YouTube videos to build my rapport with people, to connect, because I'm assuming I'm not here anymore on this show. So that would be.
I was like, wow, that's really trippy.
I like Amy's question here. I think it has a pretty easy answer for me, but I'm curious what you guys say. But how do you balance making your brain work both ways? How do you make that mental shift throughout the day?
For me, I
find it hard.
How would you handle it? Like if you had to, without Sean?
Well, okay. No, Dave. Yeah, there's this because like when you have to write an email, like that's very business for you because you don't like doing it. So that's a business task that you have to do because it's a. I
like doing it, but I like doing it sporadically. I don't like doing it regularly.
Right.
So the right frame of mind.
Okay, so that's a business thing that you have to make time for. It's a perfect example here. What do you do when that has to be done and you don't want to do? How do you change your mindset to be, okay, well, I just got to put my business hat on right now?
I usually don't. I just put it off.
Dave combs his hair instead of putting on that business hat.
Okay.
Christine said, ask Dave the last time he emailed his list. I'm a perfectionist and I like my emails to be good. And if they're not like what I want, then fuck it, I'm done. She said, by the way, it was 12/23.
So we have not emailed our list this year. No Happy New Year. No.
Well, see, that was the thing. I was gonna write this list. Okay, I was gonna write this the best of the year last year, sort of a blog post.
Dave.
I was all excited about it, but then I went blind for like 2 weeks, if you remember. So that kind of derailed that. And then I was like, well, now it's too late. So fuck it. So yeah, I suck.
Dave's tombstone is going to say perfect is the enemy of done.
So the answer to how do you make time is you don't. And the answer to how do you mentally make that switch is you don't.
You don't.
Okay, Johnny,
I wait for the switch to manually turn itself on, and if it doesn't, then I don't.
Okay, got it. Dave, email your list. Johnny, do you have anything?
Yeah, for me, it's schedule. Like I know that I'm creative. I'm in production mode until noon, and then I'm not after. And there is a break between. I've realized. I think a lot of this is know thyself, and that's something we've talked about a bunch of times. And that's the reason that Sean and I have both mentioned that we're continually tweaking our schedules, is because, you learn things that work and things that don't. Like I would not. I would not do well writing at night. Like that just wouldn't work with my brain. I wouldn't.
Yeah, me neither. I'd have a really hard time.
I would not work well writing in 2 blocks. I've had to do it before to catch up. Like instead of 1 4-hour block, I could see a lot of people being like, well, I'll write 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. That would not work for me. I mean, of course I could make it work, but I've done makeup blocks where I've had to write in the evening, and it's really.
I thought that was where Robin put makeup on you for like an
yes,
hour.
that's where she does that. But it's not comfortable for me at all. It's really, really hard to make my brain work at those different times. But where I'm going with this is that it's not just I write until noon and then I have business in the afternoon. I know enough to put something mindless or a break between the two. So it's not like I stop at noon and I say, okay, well because I don't eat lunch. So it's not like that's a natural break. But at noon I could be like, okay, well I'm done now. I'm going to go do meetings. No, I need to take a walk, or I need to, maybe that is when I answer email or something like that, where it's like I need to kind of cleanse my palate before I go back in.
Yeah, exactly the same answer for me. I mean, at noon, I'm like, I am eating lunch, or I am walking down the hill to the gym. I'm doing something. I'm changing my state so that I can be strong for the next stuff I have to do. And it's just a mental shift. I think that if you don't have that kind of schedule and you're just looking at your calendar, like, all right, what needs to get done today? And there's not a lot of order to it. I think it's very hard to make that switch, because then you just kind of do what you feel like doing. And that's happened to me a bunch of times too, until I got really religious on my schedule and dividing it between, this is the time when I'm doing creative stuff and this is the time where I'm doing business stuff. Like and not that business stuff can't be creative, but there are 2 sides to that line. And so I just make sure that I know when that stuff is scheduled, and that's when my brain is optimized for that stuff. And early on, it's not. I like story shopping when I first wake up. Like, it's a great time to do it. I'm really creative and it's fun. I move into editing a little bit later because it's a little more analytical and I'm a little more awake. I'm a little less dreamy. I also think.
Oh, you're never less dreamy.
Damn it! I lost my trail there. Yeah. So
it was worth it.
One other thing I was doing, and we've talked about this a bunch too, where you just kind of change your language. So last year I wasn't doing nearly the
Russian.
Yes, Russian is a good one. Hard sounds. I didn't write the screenplays that I wanted to last year. And we definitely, as a company, want to put more attention into that this year. So how do you make time to do that? Because I meant to do it all last year, but it's really hard when other things just keep jumping in front. And writing scripts is not like, it's a priority as far as where we want to go, but it's very hard to justify it versus, the things that we need to do that are lower hanging fruit. And so I basically just told myself, look, it's my hobby. Like, it's what I want to do. It's not work. So now I just, the Streaks app that I talked about at the beginning of the show, I use that. I have a certain number of pages that I want to process each day. And I have that. And I'm on 5 days, in a row since I got the app 5 days ago. I haven't missed it. And I just do it at nighttime. And if I don't do it, it's not a big deal, because no one's waiting on me for any of this. But it makes it fun. So I think some of those things too, if you treat them as some of your tasks, they're not really art or business. If you can classify them as a third thing, like, this is kind of my hobby. It doesn't really come out of this bucket or this bucket. It's just something I do when, like the kids are playing and, my spouse is in the other room and I just have my laptop. Like, because I have that time after dinner every night. There's a little bit of time where the children are basically doing homework. Cindy's in the kitchen, and I have my laptop, and I used to do a lot of email during that time. And now I find that if I just get the email done earlier and then it's pleasant and I'm just writing a screenplay at night, that's awesome. So you can find your own tricks. Like, what's a pleasurable thing to do that I can put over in this bucket too? And we have a question from Tara here. How do you keep on track when there are a million other things people ask you to do without sounding like a complete egotist or asshat? I have an answer for that, but Dave, do you want to go first?
You ignore everybody's requests.
That's where I thought you were going. Johnny.
Well, I'm just laughing because I just saw Christine's note that she can download a Tim tracking app. That would be a time tracking app at sterlingandstone.net/time. So I missed the question because I was snickering at the Tim tracking app.
For me, I think you can just say, look, I mean, just be protective. If you're carving out your creative time and you only have these other times, say, look, I'd love to help you, but this is the next time that I have. And you know, if that time is a month away, like, sorry, but that's the first available time that you have. It's not that I'm not going to help you. Don't say no. Just say, look, I legitimately cannot help you until this time without saying no to another commitment I've made to somebody else or myself.
I find the less friends you have, the easier it is. The less people you work with, the easier it is on your time.
Well, and you can be less accessible, you know, like you just can, like after enough of that, I mean, not to be dismissive, but you only have so much time. And so if you do get good at saying no to things, which again sounds a little harsh, but it's the truth. You can't say yes to everything. Then eventually people kind of get it as well. So that's something that happens.
Yeah, you just have to
people your cell phone number is also good.
Right. You could just say like, look, this is another way. I don't make promises that I can't keep, and I can't promise to help you without breaking another promise to somebody else. Like it's not that you're being an asshole. You're safeguarding your time, which is the most precious thing you have. And I haven't always been great about that, but I'm trying harder to be better. And these are some of the tools that I use.
Listen, I've only got so many thousands of hours of life left on this earth. And I don't want to spend a single one of them doing this thing for you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Did you just hear Dave being, really optimistic? That's uncharacteristically optimistic about his thousands
of hours.
If you said that hundreds of hours, that would have been a perfect Dave comment. Yeah, why did you go with thousands? That seems like you're really reaching.
Well, you don't want to count on these things.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so let's shut it down, and I think that was hopefully that answered, because that came from a question, I think. So hopefully that helped everybody out. I'll just remind everyone.
Talk about the time tracking sheet.
Yeah, that was the link that I gave a minute ago. It's at sterlingandstone.net/time, not Tim. If you want to track Tim, you're on your own. But we do have that free resource available, sterlingandstone.net/time, and that's it. So go get that. It's free. Did I say free? It's free. I feel like I'm running in circles here. It's been a long day. All right. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks everyone.